Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today, we're going to be talking about The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism, which I had on VHS back in my Selkirk days under the title of Castle of the Walking Dead. Yes, from good old Interglobal Home Video. They specialized in low-grade, cheapo VHS releases of obscure movies and such. And this was one that I always really enjoyed. It was kind of my introduction to Gothic horror. It's loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum, and stars Christopher Lee as the primary villain. So, let's talk about it. The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism, aka Castle of the Walking Dead, aka Blood Demon, aka the Serpent Pit and the Pendulum, aka the Pendulum, aka the Pit and the Pendulum, aka... Welcome back. Yeah, this one went under a few different titles. It's one from Hemisphere Pictures, which was a small studio in the early 70s that essentially specialized in schlocky drive-in horror movies. So this one was a little bit different from their usual fare. It wasn't common for them to get into the Gothic horror arena, but... yeah, I always really liked this one a lot, actually. So the story opens with a man being led to his execution. The man is Christopher Lee as Count Regula. Not Dracula, Regula. He's just a regular count. Just a regular. Yeah, I think that's about as far as we can take that joke. Anyway, Count Regula has been charged with murder. Murder most foul indeed, and most heinous, and absolutely horrifying in the eyes of God. Namely, he had kidnapped and killed 12 young women, virgins, for reasons unknown. So, he was caught, he was sentenced to execution, and he was drawn and quartered, which basically means they tied each of his limbs to the back of a horse and then whacked the horse to get them to run away, and his arms and legs are ripped off, and he is left to bleed to death. Pretty nasty way to go. So several years later, a young man and a young woman are both given mysterious invitations to the old castle of Count Regula. The invitations supposedly from Regula himself. So as they get to the town, on their way to the castle, they are asking some of the locals about who is this Count Regula person, what's he all about, and they learn about the story about how he kidnapped and killed these 12 virgins and was drawn and quartered, and it's impossible that the invitation could be from him because he's dead. So this whole time we get a bit of a Dracula vibe, where, much like how Jonathan Harker, or Renfield, depending which version you're watching, goes to town under the invitation of Count Dracula, and everybody's saying, oh no, stay away from the castle, it's evil, and nobody's going to take you all the way there, and blah, 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 blah. It's the same kind of situation, so you get a distinct Dracula vibe. However, Regula is not a vampire, he's just an evil count who dabbles in the supernatural. So they head off to the castle, and, well, things get very strange indeed once they arrive. The castle itself is in ruins, but the castle below is not. It's very much intact. Now, to say more of what they discover at the castle might kind of spoil some of the surprises of the story and whatnot, so I'll just kind of leave you hanging there in the sense of mystery and intrigue. But one thing I will talk about is there are some really cool, genuinely chilling and atmospheric set pieces in this film that I've always been really impressed by. I had actually forgotten quite a bit about this film, so when Skinslip and I watched it, when we both got the Blu-ray set recently, we were both quite taken by just how striking some of these scenes are. In particular, there's a lot of lead up to the approach to the castle. I mean, I don't think they even get to the castle until about halfway through the movie, so there's a lot of build-up, a lot of anticipation. And as they're riding the horse-drawn carriage through the forest to the castle, the driver is like freaking out because he's seeing things that may or may not be hallucinations, such as bodies hanging from the trees and sometimes limbs literally sticking out of the trees and so forth. So it's like a forest of lost souls almost, and it's really quite atmospheric and spooky. Once they're actually in the castle, well, I guess under the castle, that's when we get to see a lot of the Edgar Allan Poe torture device inspiration. For example, there's a wonderful suspenseful scene where a girl is looking for someone and she finds herself in a room. She gets locked in the room, and there's a narrow bridge that goes across to the other side of the room, and below the bridge is a pit full of snakes, the serpent pit of the titles. And she can't turn around and go back because the door is locked. And then the bridge begins to retract below her feet. And it gets shorter and shorter, so she has to like stand up against the door, and any second she's going to fall into the pit. What, you think I'm just going to tell you what happens? Watch the movie. And then, of course, there's the pendulum room, which is one of the big centerpieces of the movie. It's one of the big traps you've been waiting to see, because every movie that does the pit and the pendulum does things a little bit differently. So this one, I have to say, they did a really good job. Like, the actual pendulum is this massive blade, and you really get the sense of weight as it's swinging back and forth. And it shows you the locking mechanism at the top of the pendulum. So every time it swings, you see it move down a notch. Then it swings again, it moves down a notch. Meanwhile, the guy's like tied there trying to get loose, and the thing's getting closer and closer with every swing. I mean, it's not going to take very long for it to get down and slice him in half, so he's got to figure out a way to get out of that, if there is a way out of it. Again, you think I'm going to tell you what happens? Watch the movie. So the long and the short of it is, if you like a good atmospheric Gothic horror movie with a lot of those classic elements and some of the classic torture devices and so forth, and seeing how the characters either get out of them or don't, this is a good one, actually. And it's unfortunate that it's almost a lost film, actually, because this particular Blu-ray, they couldn't find any like actual archival prints of it. The only prints that they could find that were in suitable condition to do a Blu-ray transfer of were from private collectors who had a couple of 16mm prints. So that's what the Blu-ray is made from. They took these two 16mm collector's prints and transferred them, and between the two of them got one complete cut that was in as good a condition as we're likely ever to see it, which I think is one of the reasons this particular disc was actually given away as a bonus disc in this box set, the Hemisphere Box of Horrors. So the other three movies in here, Curse of the Vampires, The Blood Drinkers, and Brain of Blood, are all available individually, but this one is not. That may change at some point, who knows, but for the time being, the only way you can get it on Blu-ray is in that box set. It's not available any other way. Now, it has been released on DVD a few times over the years, and, you know, being such an obscure film that just seems to have almost been lost to the halls of time, you can find it on YouTube a couple times over as well, under the alternate title of Castle of the Walking Dead. Actually, I think you can find it under the Torture Chamber title as well. Yeah, so I liked it a lot. It was great to revisit it again after so many years. I mean, the last time I would have seen it would have been on that old VHS tape I had, and that's pushing 20 plus years ago. So it was quite a treat. Now, I gotta say, if you're a big Christopher Lee fan, and who isn't, Christopher Lee's appearance in this is pretty brief. It almost feels like they only had him for a day on set, but he primarily appears at the beginning and the climax at the end as Count Regula. I mean, his screen presence is undeniably captivating. I mean, it's freaking Christopher Lee. But it's unfortunate he didn't get a little bit more to do. Most of it is about the mystery as to who the two young people who were summoned to the castle are, and why they were summoned, and, you know, learning about why the Count was killing these virgins and so forth, and what all that. Everything is explained. It's all tied up very nicely by the end, and is overall a very entertaining, atmospheric, and satisfying Gothic horror film of the low-budget drive-in persuasion. It very much has the feel of like kind of a knockoff Roger Corman or Hammer Films Poe movie, but one of the better ones that are out there. It's quite good. Alrighty, well, if you'd like to add this to your collection, I will include a couple of Amazon links in the description. One, of course, to the Hemisphere Box of Horrors, and in the event that that's unavailable, I'll see if I can find a couple of the DVD releases for you as well. And failing that, well, like I said, I'm pretty sure it'll still be on YouTube by the time you're seeing this. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now, so until next time, thanks very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. Be sure to catch me on Twitch. I stream just about every day, and I'll see you next time. Until then, sayonara.